Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back. It's that time of week again. The MLB Power Rankings. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch these videos. Honestly, you guys are the reason I do them. We got, I think, 12 new subs last week, and still a bunch of you guys watching that aren't subbed. Just would appreciate it. It helps me stay motivated, helps me to join the channel. So if you guys could smash that sub button. Otherwise, guys, these keep coming every Sunday, and we're going to kick things off. And every Sunday, we're going to have the Oakland A's at the very bottom, because how do they make any room? How do they make any progress? This team is the worst. I'm going to say it probably every week, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant. 0-3 against Houston, 1-2 against Arizona, so they can steal a win here and there, but they're still on pace to be the worst team in MLB history. Go be it. Kansas City, number 29, 2-1 against San Diego, so they had a nice start to the week, and then they got swept over the weekend against the White Sox. They're pretty much cemented in the bottom of this Central Division, a division in the American League that is not too good, but those two seems pretty cemented. Colorado, 2-1 against Cincinnati, 0-3 against Texas, so another team that we've seen consistently down here. It's going to be a same old story for a bunch of these teams. I think when we start to get up here, we start to see kind of a rotating gate, but as the season goes along, obviously the top gets a little more secure, the bottom gets a little more secure, so it's no surprise to see some of these teams repeating. 27, Washington, 0-3 against Miami, so pretty much the story of the week for them. They lose against a team that I thought they were making some ground on in this division. So it's supposed to be the one team that they have a shot against, and they got swept. Then they went in and played Detroit, won that series, so had they really beat Miami, I would have felt a little more confidence. Every time I think Washington's starting to maybe be a little bit more competitive, they have a week like this. Nothing to be too proud of against Miami. 3-0 against Washington, 1-2 against San Fran. So Miami continues to still be a little bit above expectation in terms of performance, but I think we all know who they are at this point. Number 26. Number 25, dropping a few spots. We got Cincinnati, 1-2 against Colorado. And then they get swept by the Yankees over the weekend. I had a little bit of faith in Cincinnati for a little bit of time there. If you were watching, maybe around the end of April, they had been winning. I thought they had played a pretty tough schedule, and that's really what had held them back. They're still in the mid 400s, but a week like this kind of shows that they're not ready to be in the competition for a playoff spot. So that's why I have them in the bottom row, losing to Colorado, getting smashed by a Yankees team that isn't quite performed super well. It's going to land them into the bottom row. Right above them, we got Chicago White Sox, 2-1 against Cleveland to start the week. Swept Kansas City, so we are seeing a possible resurgence of the White Sox, and this is probably the bottom we're going to see them. If they keep playing like this, we're going to see them start jumping up pretty quick, because this division's wide open. We're going to see a lot of the division in the bottom row, and they're the weakest division leader in the whole MLB. I guess both Centrals are kind of there, so if the White Sox start beating their competition, especially like sweeping Kansas City and beating Cleveland, they keep winning these division games, they're going to be right back up in the middle. 23, Cleveland, 1-2 against the White Sox, 0-2 against the Mets. So they play the Mets again tonight for the third game. So already losing this series, Cleveland has pretty much come back down to earth, I think. That's what I like to think about when I'm seeing Cleveland, how their season has gone. They were a big surprise, I think, for most people making the playoffs last year. Division was wide open then. Remains somewhat wide open now, but they had a little bit of benefit with Minnesota so injured last year. White Sox dealing with a lot of injuries last year too, kind of allowed them to get in there. But right now it's not working out for them. And I kind of see them struggling in the future when they start matching up against the Royals. And they seem to be going the wrong direction in the division. 22, San Fran, 3-0 against the Phillies, kick things off. And then they beat Miami. San Fran kind of remains that team that they're ready to fight. They got a decent rotation, like it's not too bad, and they have some top aces in there, and their bats can get it done on any given night. It just seems like the consistency and the overall isn't there. I don't know if it will be, but any given night, they can give a team a run for their money for sure. Kind of excited to see how they play when they start matching up with San Diego and the Dodgers, maybe they can start sweeping some of those series. We might see the Giants get back in this. Who knows? Number 21, we got Detroit Tigers. 1-1 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Washington. Just a 5-game week for the Tigers. Not going to move them really based on this week, but it's not great. Playing a little bit of weaker competition and coming in with a losing record. Not ideal for a team that is in the playoff hunt realistically, but not ideal. Number 20, moving up, I think the most spots on the board. They had the kind of week they needed because they were KO'd. 2 weeks ago, we saw them in the bottom row. And I pretty much was like, I guess this is for real. This is what the Cardinals are. But they got some resurgence, I think, off that one Arenado home run like 10 days ago, it feels like at this point. Just like kickstarted this thing. They beat Milwaukee early in the week. The team, you kind of expected them to be competition with at the beginning of the season. And then they beat the Dodgers 3-1 over this weekend. And we saw some massive offense coming from the Cardinals. I think we are on the verge of possibly seeing the Cardinals get right back in this race. It might be the first team to start bottom row or start the season top row, go all the way to the bottom, and then fight their way back and show, hey, you had us right at the beginning. Keep your eye on the Cardinals. I'm interested to see how this plays out, but they're going to need to beat teams like this. The Chicago Cubs, who went 0-3 against Houston to kick things off on the week, and then 1-2 against Philly. So a terrible week for the Cubs. The Cubs have just fallen. I had a lot of faith in them at one point. They had a decent start to the season. Still, I always thought they were underperforming, but now they're kind of at a tale of two. They're going to cross here. This is the next matchup. I'm really interested to see who's going to turn it around here. Seems like two teams heading in different directions, and we'll see what plays out, and that's why we're going to watch the season for sure. 18, New York Mets. Moving up a couple of spots. They had a 2-1 series win against the Tampa Bay Rays, which was massive. This Mets team had fallen quite a bit, and I was starting to get real concerned about them, but we saw a week where they bounced back, and this is a long season, and then the Mets have what it takes. Right now, they're still a little bit out of a playoff spot snugly, but this middle row is pretty interchangeable, you'll see, and any team that goes on a 6-0 week is going to immediately be winning this row, if not being promoted to the next row. So keep your eye on some of these teams. It's that time of summer where some teams are going to get hot and some teams are going to fall apart. Number 17, Pittsburgh, 1-1 against Detroit, 1-2 against Arizona. And speaking of falling apart, has Pittsburgh fallen apart? I wouldn't say so. I'd say they're exactly where they should be. A lot of people were getting way hype at the beginning of the season, not looking at the grand scheme of things, how they were playing, what kind of the variance was like, the teams they were playing. But they've been basically right here since week 2 of our power rankings, because we kind of figure the Pirates are going to be in the hunt. Are they strong enough at this point to make it? I don't think so, but right now they're sitting pretty in a good spot. Number 16, we got the Seattle Mariners, 1-2 against Boston, 1-2 against Atlanta. If you look at who has a better chance of making the playoffs, Pittsburgh probably does, but I think if you match these two teams up head-to-head, Seattle would take that one in a best of 7. So I'm giving them a little bit of an edge, but Seattle needs to go on a run here. Right now they're sitting here 4th in their division, and if they're not ahead of the A's, they wouldn't be ahead of anyone. So Seattle's got a lot of work cut out for them. Wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. Number 15, Angels, 2-2 against Baltimore, 2-1 against Minnesota. So a very good week for the Angels to show that they're ready. They're ready to take that step forward. I'm kind of interested in seeing Ohtani and Trout, and finally these guys can just take it forward. These guys have been trying for years on this power rankings to really show that they're a top 10 team. They haven't quite done it, but they can start beating up on some of these teams ahead of them. They played pretty strong against some top teams in this power rankings this week. They have to keep the momentum going. They have to win the matchups in the division against the teams that are ahead of them, and they'll start climbing. But right now, they're on the outside looking in. Number 14, Arizona, 2-1 against Oakland, 2-1 against Pittsburgh. They've been that team that's just chipped up slowly all season. And I think very early I was called out for having them underrated. I think I probably had them down here. I said, yes, they have to keep it going. They have to keep it going. And they have. And it's 550, I think, is their win percentage around. It's the depth that worries me. They lost that one series to Oakland. They didn't lose it, sorry. They lost the game. It feels like a series loss if you don't sweep Oakland. But they lost that game. And I owe that a little bit to the depth, in my opinion. So the depth is what is holding this team back. But right now, they're quietly, not so quietly for some of you, sitting in that playoff, that scene, right? So can they keep it up? They can. They can definitely win series. They have the team to do it. 3-game series against most of the teams in the National League. I think they do have a strong chance of doing that. Come playoffs, if they make the playoffs, I don't know if they have the team to do it to get very far. That's kind of why I have them at 14. Number 13, San Diego. 1-2 against Kansas City, 1-2 against Boston. I'm kind of just sitting here waiting for them to turn it on. When's it happening? They lose to Kansas City. Sure, they lose to Boston, a team that's ahead of them already in the power rankings, but Kansas City, they got to find these wins. And I'm just waiting because this team has all the talent, right? They got to do it, right? So I'm going to give them another week before I really punish them. I still think they could beat Arizona in the long term here. Number 12, one of the biggest free fallers of the week. Like, I don't know what to say about my team here. Blue Jays went 1-3 against the Yankees, get swept by Baltimore. I think they're 5-14 now in interdivisional play, like in their division. And they're about 500 against teams that are about 500. The Jays, they just seem to be the biggest disappointment so far this season. Mind you, this American League East is stacked. This is the last place team in the American League East right now. Toronto Blue Jays, number 12. What can I say? They haven't met what it's going to take. And if you're last in this division, guaranteed, you're not making the playoffs. So right now, the Jays got to figure something out. Number 11, Philadelphia, 0-3 against San Fran, 2-1 against the Cubs. Not a great week at all, but I'm going to hold some favor in there that they're starting to get things rolling. The pitching, little bit of concern, obviously. The bullpen, big concern right now for them. But they have beat these teams that are below them. They tend to lose these series sometimes to these worst teams. But I feel like they're a team that's going to be a slow start this season. They're going to be right there in the thick of it. They're going to be right there at the end. And come playoff 10, they're going to be right there too. So watch out for that. 10, Boston, 2-1 against Seattle, 2-1 against San Diego. They just win. They're winning. They're a winning franchise. They have winning in their genes over in Boston. So not surprised to see them here. I guess if you asked me at the beginning of the season, I would have been. But now, at this point in the season, I'm not. This team has proven that they deserve to be in there. The depth in the pitching is going to be a little bit of concern, but it's getting the job done. And their offense is also getting the job done. Number 9, Milwaukee Brewers, 1-2 against St. Louis, 1-2 against Tampa. They're probably holding on to this top 10 spot, like hardly. If they keep playing the weeks like they have been, they're going to be falling. And it's going to be a quick fall. It's going to be as quick as we saw those New York Mets start to fall earlier in the season. Some of these other teams have potential to hop them by getting hotter. Well, they're just not. But still, I think that cushion in the division is going to be helpful. I think this is their division to lose still. But there's a lot of baseball to be played, and the Brewers are just on the teetering. Prove to me, Brewers, what are you going to do? Are you going to win or are you going to lose? Number 8, New York Yankees. 3-1 against Toronto, 3-0 against Cincy. They just had a crushing week, and they pretty much put me in my place when I started to say I was concerned for them. They took those concerns and said, get the hell out of here, right? So the Yankees are right back in this now. They've been playing very well. They're getting the run support. Judge is crushing homers, whether he's looking in dugouts or whatever. He's still crushing them. And their rotation, but they still have Garrett Cole. An ace is an ace. Not every team has one of those, so they at least have something going for them there. Number 7, Minnesota Twins, 1-2 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against the Angels. So not a great trip to LA for the Twins, but they still have that nice cushion in that division, that weak division. So I think this spot is theirs to lose. They should win and continue to be pretty much lock to make the playoffs, unless some disaster starts happening. They got to win the games that they got to win, and if we start seeing that gap disappear and some of these teams down here are beating them in head-to-head as well, we're going to see them quickly meet up in here, and then there's going to be who's going to make the playoffs at number 13 and 14. Right now, kind of feel like they're still a guarantee. Number 6, 7-game win streak right now. We got the Houston Astros. They swept the A's over the weekend. They swept the Cubs earlier in the week. And I tried to hold on to them for so long. I was starting to get a lot of, they're too high early in the season. I was like, just wait. But then when I finally give up and put them down to like 12, that's when they start winning and they start crushing, and their team's starting to get healthy and they're starting to be the team I kind of expected them to be. Mind you, some teams ahead of them, I did not expect those teams to be as strong as they've turned out to be, and I've won some of the matchups against Houston. So Houston still right now is fighting for a wild card spot, and I think the division is going to be a lot tougher than it ever has been for the Houston Astros. Number 5, we got the LA Dodgers, 2-1 against Minnesota. So a nice start to the week. But then they lose this series to the Cardinals, and I really felt like that was a series for them to really take that step forward to be the strongest team in the National League. But I started to see some concerns that I had, like I did it early in the season with just the pitching. The pitching does not seem to be like the strong point it has been for so many years now. They're still a top 5 team, so we can never discount that. But the Dodgers seem to be pretty solidified in that spot. Moving up, Baltimore Orioles. What a week. Coming off a huge series sweep in Toronto. Gotta say, it breaks my heart a bit, but you Orioles fans, you have stuck true to this team. You deserve to rein it in a bit here. Baltimore had a nice series split on the road in LA earlier in the week too. So to have that, just amazing week. 5-2, and they keep on rolling, even closing the gap on first place. Number 3, still there, Texas Rangers, 1-2 against Atlanta. So they played Atlanta. I'm just going to throw them up there. They played Atlanta early in the week. These guys matched up. Atlanta walked away with a 2-1 series win, so that was huge. Texas rebounded over the weekend, smashing the Rockies 3-0, and Atlanta continued on, beating up the American League West and beat Seattle 2-1. So Atlanta making a threat for this number 1. We know who it is. It's the Tampa Bay Rays. They went 1-2 against the Mets, 2-1 against Milwaukee. So 500 week. I think they're basically 500 in their past 12-ish games. Atlanta is right there on their heels, but I was not ready to dethrone them. Atlanta has a massive week this week, and I want to see how they play in it. They're playing the Dodgers, the first team on their tail in the power rankings here, and then they play the Phillies in a 4-game set. And that series is those 2 series are gonna mean a lot for Atlanta if they're gonna overthrow and take number 1 here. Playing the 2 top teams that they're gonna be their biggest competition of this season, they can pretty much put the division to rest if they sweep the Phillies and just show their dominance. Tampa Bay, they're walking in here and they're going to be playing Toronto, a team that has been super struggling, and Tampa Bay has had those injuries that they're dealing with, and maybe it's made them a little bit mortal. If they can go in there and beat Toronto, that's going to be a big story as why I kept them in first place. But guys, let me know what you guys think. Let me know who you have way too low, way too high, etc., etc. Guys, don't forget, subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. We will see you there for that next video.